Good evening. Welcome to a very special and exclusive interview and discussion on what we believe to be one of the most pressing issues in Sri Lanka, and something which has been headlining all forms of media in Sri Lanka and needs expert analysis on and as to what we need to do as a common populace, as a society, to take care of this issue. And today we'll be discussing all matters regarding the dengue epidemic. Now, to talk about dengue and to understand and explain to our viewers of the severity of this problem and what we need to do in turn to eradicate this epidemic, we have here with us and joining us to talk about the epidemic of dengue and what we need to do in turn. We have two expert consultants and specialists all the way from Thailand who has been invited from the government of Sri Lanka, and they in turn have sent these two specialists to Sri Lanka to monitor the situation in the country and take expert analysis on what it is like over here. They have come here under the purview of the Ministry of Health in Thailand. And joining with us in the discussion room today, we have Professor Siripen Kalyanuruj, and who is a consultant at the World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Case Management and of Dengue, DHF and DSS. And she is also a short-term consultant and temporary advisor for the WHO, and she has been traveling around 20 countries, especially taking care of dengue cases, and she has had 20 years of experience, and she has also been in Sri Lanka in 2009, also dedicated to the same issue of taking care of cases with regards to dengue. And also we have Dr. Jiripat, who is also a senior expert at the Vector-Borne Bureau of Disease and the Department of Disease Control all the way from Thailand, and they've come here under the purview of the Ministry of Health. Good evening to you both. Now, people have in fact heard about what dengue is on a very fundamental level, but let us get to the basics of this question. What is dengue? We hear so much about dengue, the fatality the illness can actually cause toward the people, but what exactly is dengue? I'd like to ask Professor Siripen Kalyanuruj.
So just dengue is a viral infection caused by dengue virus. So that the presentation usually just only acute febrile illness, high continuous fever, and some patients will have headache, myalgias, arthralgias, and if they have breathing symptoms like breathing in the skin, or maybe just nose breathes, or maybe gum breathings, or maybe that's hematemesis, or that's past the black stools, that's breathing in the gastrointestinal tracts. Do you think of dengue? Especially during these outbreaks, if high fever with the breathing manifestation, sometimes with the aches and pains that I told you, and sometimes with some rash, so that you think of dengue. Even without these symptoms, you think of dengue during the epidemics. And I think that the majority of patients who got infected with dengue are not so severe. Just only maybe 10% of them will have more severe disease that we call dengue hemorrhagic fever. That's the change in the body is that in the blood vessels, you have plasma, and plasma will go into the body at the critical period. That's the end of febrile phase. So I think that's the message to the community is that if they have acute febrile illness, just go to the doctors, and then maybe just only supportive symptomatic care. But for the no need for admission in the majority of cases. But during the no fever, the transition from high fever to low fever, if no clinical improvement, they still have poor appetite, abdominal pain, vomiting, or everything persists. That's a critical period that you have to go to the hospital quickly. Don't wait. Because the community usually believe that when they have high fever, they go to the hospital. But when they have no fever, even though the patient's very weak, lying on the bed, no appetite, abdominal pain, they are happy, they stay at home. And then, that's maybe the signs of shock. Because patients with shock in dengue, they have good consciousness. They can walk, they can talk, but maybe sometimes very weak with the abdominal pain, vomiting not so well. So that if you wait maybe just only 4 hours, not rush to the hospital, maybe they have shock. So, and then after shock, not enough blood circulation to the organ, especially the liver, so that they get a liver injury. If no proper management, don't still go to the hospital. Maybe there's a prolonged and profound shock and other organ involvement, including the kidney involvement. So that's the message is that not all patients will have severe disease. Maybe only 10% of them have, that special, plasma leak that can lead to shock. And those patients who have more severe disease with a leaking syndrome, that's maybe only 10% or 20% of them develop shock because of the plasma leakage. So I think that's if you go to the hospital, maybe no need for admission, but the doctors will have the tools to select whose patient is so severe. That's do the blood test. For the platelet count is important. If very low platelet, and with the signs and symptoms, that's warning signs that are not good signs. Maybe that's an indication for admission. So for those who has a higher level of platelet counts, maybe no need. But important thing that have to come for follow-up every day as recommended by the doctors. And if abnormal signs happen, just rush to the hospital, not the next day. Maybe immediately that they have abdominal pain or vomiting or even bleeding.
And my next question would be to Dr. Jirapat. Now, both of you have been here in Sri Lanka from last Thursday. Might I ask, what exactly have you experienced? How is the status in Sri Lanka like as far as the dengue epidemic is concerned?
Looking at the situation, we can look back about 15 years, how Sri Lanka experienced the dengue. Before 2009, Sri Lanka experienced something like 1,000 of cases a year when you didn't have the outbreaks. In the year you have the outbreak, you can have something like 12,000, something like that. But after start from 2009, you can see the number of cases was rising and come up to something like 20,000 as baseline and never came down to some thousand like before. So now your baseline is going up, something like 20,000, and then in the year you have the outbreak, you could have something like 30,000, 40,000, and in last year, which is a record-breaking year, it's about 50,000, 55,000 the whole year. This year, before I came, I heard that only half a year, just past half a year, you did have 77,000 of cases with more than 200 deaths. So this is what this situation telling you is that there's something wrong going on, and it's increasing. It's increasing in a long-term trend. So when you look back for the situation by month in each year, you can see that start from 2009 with high number of cases, and look throughout the year, you can see that there are cases every month throughout the years. So this means the transmission happen and remain in the community, in the area throughout the year. So this reflects that start from 2009, transmission in the community hasn't been stopped and continue. So that why you can have a cumulative effect. And you start having more and more cases. And when the year you have the outbreak, like last year you have a high, and you cannot stop it, so you can have more and more. So now come this year, the highest year for the dengue outbreak.
Right. If I may ask now, as you said, I also do agree on the fact that the dengue cases have been uprising all the way from 2009. Just like you said, on a statistical level, it was around 1,000 cases back then, but now it has almost reached 60 to 80,000 cases, and it keeps rising. The baseline keeps rising. Might I ask, what do you think the fundamental reason is for the outbreak of such a vast amount of fatalities or incidents or cases when it comes to the community of Sri Lanka?
For the death in dengue, I think that's compare with other outbreaks. The case fatality rate is just only maybe 0.2 or 0.3%. That means that if you have 1,000 patients, you have 2 or 3 dead. For other epidemic in other country, maybe the case fatality rate is quite higher than this. It's a range from 1 to 10%. That means just only 100 patients, you have 1 death or 10 deaths. So I think that's compared for other country other epidemics. Doctors and nurses, the MOH manage quite well for the case fatality rate. But the number of deaths is very high. That's due to the larger amount of patients. But the case fatality rate remains the same. So I think that, but even with the low case fatality rate, we even would like to reduce to 0, so that we try to improve the management, even though it's quite good now. And I think that so far, the Ministry of Health, has managed to, better case management. I can see within a few days after I come here. Last Thursday, after I arrival, we went to Nikombo Hospital with 700 patients, 2 on 1 bed and some on the floor. And then that's maybe that doctors and nurses work very hard. But nowadays, the government increased the number of doctors and including the important tools for the diagnosis or maybe for the decision in the management, that is full blood count machines. So now, today, they distribute to almost all hospitals in the endemic area. So everything is improving. And also, that last Tuesday, they opened a new high dependency unit in the national hospitals for about 40 or 50 patients. So that's a unit high dependency for the more severe cases. The simple case will go to the baby dengue ward, not just ordinary ward. So I think that now the management is quite good. And think that maybe the main reason is that maybe for the triaging at the patients, when the patients come to the hospital, everybody would like to be in the hospital. So if too much workload, maybe the quality of work is not so good. So I think that we try to improve the triaging with more parameters, more tools, so that I hope that the number of patients that do need admission will be reduced and the better care.
Dr. Jirapat, on the other hand, now, just like Professor Siripen said, if we are to expedite or if we are to increase the rate at which dengue cases are reduced, do you believe that as citizens they have to take an initiative themselves in reducing, might I say, waste disposal or how they clean their surroundings? How do you see that this contributes to reducing dengue cases?
I do agree with what you just said. I think the case management is now is very good, great improvement. So you have very low case fatality rate, but people are still coming to the hospital, and there are more and more. So to stop people coming to the hospital, the only way is to stop the transmission. And who should do that, stopping the transmission? Most of the country have done many things to stop the dengue transmission, but we realize that the most important part is the community movement. So what we need is the community empowerment. Community should play an important role to stop the transmission of dengue. What we can do the household transmission breaking or stopping at household level, and it's not difficult, but we have to do it regularly. I would recommend that we can do the what we call the source reduction dengue breeding place. This is the kind of source reduction. We need to do it. We need to check it. I would not say that we just go and change the container every 7 days. The key issue is you have to look around your house, in your neighborhood, and check it. If you have any container with the positive of the mosquito larva, this is a key issue. And then you have the activity to reduce the source of breeding site. and do it regularly and do it together, because mosquito can fly. If you do it here today, your neighbor is not going to do it. They will release some mosquito, and tomorrow mosquito will come from your neighbor. So this is a way of a community. No matter how many health staff you have, if you spend millions of money for that health staff to go check and do it, it's not going to work. In most of the country we have seen, the only key role player is the community itself.
True. I think I definitely agree with Dr. Jirapath when he said that it's the responsibility of the community to take action themselves. Professor Siripen, may I ask, what, on your expertise, what do you think are the measures to mitigate dengue, the outbreak of dengue?
So I think that's to reduce the case fatality rate in dengue. I think we need two sides. We have to improve the knowledge for the doctors, nurses, and other healthcare personnel. So I think that here we have intensive course training, short course training for the junior staffs and maybe nurses to know how to manage with the patients. And the other side is that the community has to know the proper time to go to the hospital. So I think that's the message I give to you at the very beginning, that if you have fever, it's quite okay. And then you have a persistent vomiting, abdominal pain, we call it warning signs, you have to go to the hospital immediately. And for the training of the doctors and nurses, and also I would like to tell you to the communities that no specific medicines for the dengue treatment, but management is IV fluid to give to the patients. And I think that's a judicious amount of IV fluid is necessary, and the duration not too prolonged. So not every patient needs the IV fluid, and the rate of IV fluid or the amount is different. So we have to train the doctors that's for the IV fluid management, and to educate the communities that no need for early IV fluid during the fever phase. So that forced oral intake, soft diet is a better way. But in the critical period, that's appropriate amounts and types of the IV fluid is needed. And another for the doctor is that have to early detect the bleeding symptoms, because the majority is inside the stomach, intestines that not coming out to for doctors to see. So if we have the kind of the laboratory test, that is a packed cell volume, is it dropping or no rising, that's you have the doctor has to give an early blood transfusion. Or maybe in ladies, menstruation, or maybe at urine, maybe you can have a bleeding in the urine. So that's you have to look for the bleeding and early blood transfusion.
Right. On the other hand, now Sri Lanka is mostly a vast country with so many people around in and around the western province, since Colombo is a commercial capital. And might I ask now, the cases of dengue has been rife, especially in the western province. Why do you think is the main reason for this? Is it because that most people are educated about dengue in the western province, or do you think that education has not flourished enough to other provinces to take action against dengue?
When you have a modern life, you don't, you don't connect to people, your neighborhood, you just live your living every day. But for dengue, if you want to control, it has to be synchronized. It has to be synchronized. You do it together. And I would propose that this is a game of weakest link. If you do have a chain, for example, no matter how each ring is strong, no matter how it's strong, but the strength of the whole chain comes from the weakest part. So you should not leave anybody behind in the battle of dengue. So you need to help each other in the community. That's why I try to say that it has to be community. It's not individual, but they have to do it in household level. And what is missing when I came this time, I visit in many places and I observe. I think the very important part what's missing is the community participation. And from what I heard, when you did have the tsunami, you did have the flood, people are willing to help each other to fight against something, and you overcome that. So dengue is not impossible. It's just how to use your community power.
We live in a world where almost everything can be done just at the tip of our fingers. So, and my next question to you would be, Professor Siripen, now, how can technology, this improved technology, be used to mitigate dengue? Is there any form of medicine or indigenous treatment as far as technological improvement is concerned?
So far, I think that no specific antiviral, anti-dengue viruses. It's very difficult to find. So now, I think that currently we have the vaccine, but not very a good vaccines because the efficacy is just only maybe 60%. So every vaccine we need is about 90%. And then, the against dengue is just only 40%. And I heard that serotype 2 is very common, maybe 90% in Sri Lanka. So the vaccine won't help. Another thing that I heard that in the community, that they have, maybe papaya capsule. That's not proof, no evidence that it's help in the improving some things. Maybe they say that increase some of the platelet counts. So that's not the important part in severity of dengue. So I think that's no evidence to prove that it's effective. But maybe so far it's no harm. So for me, I think that if the family are happy to take, okay, I'm not against that. But actually, I think that it's no improvement. It just help with maybe easiness and the family feel relieved that something to give to the patients.
Right. Professor Siripen, Dr. Jirpat, now you were invited by the government of Sri Lanka to visit Sri Lanka and to take a look at what the dengue cases have been like. Might I ask now, Thailand and Sri Lanka has always had its fair share of ties between the years, and what exactly is your expertise on Sri Lanka's case of when it comes to dengue, and what sort of a solution do you have in mind to the existing problem of dengue in terms of Thailand?
I see that potentially reduce in the case fatality rate because the majority of your senior consultants are dengue experts. I come here in 2009 and help with the case management, and now they have their own clinical practice guidelines to distribute all over the country for children and for adults. And then we need something. If you have this larger epidemic, maybe you need more trainers, and I think that it's easier. Because now you have more than 10 to 20 dengue experts. So we have to have a capacity building, train them, and in order to improve the case fatality rate. So I think that it's not so difficult for Sri Lanka. So that's, I think that I see the lights at the end of the cloud, that you will be passed with a very low case fatality rate in Sri Lanka. Bilateral or maybe trilateral collaborations between Thailand, Sri Lanka, and WHO. And that's with the coordination with the Royal Thai Embassy. So that's, I think that we have submitted the plan to the Director Generals and also to the Minister of Health and to the cabinets. That's for the case management. I have an immediate action plan that can be implemented within a few days with some of the brochure or diagram to distribute for all doctors, nurses, and also for the community. What is dengue and how to management? That's an immediate plan. And then we have a long-term plan. So I think that with the Thailand team more doctors and nurses will come to train. Not only doctors, but maybe the nurses and maybe for the sustainable low case fatality rate. We have to maybe capacity building to the lower level of the healthcare centers, including the communities about dengue. So that's a long-term plan. So this is an urgent situation that we have to clear our study, our schedule to come here a week, and maybe later within a month that we can clear our schedule and we can come and assist Sri Lankan dengue experts in planning for the capacity building and training many level of doctors, including nurses.
So I believe the fruits and the results of this long-term and short-term projects can be materialized in the near future. And may I ask Dr. Jirapat, Professor Siripen, are there any last messages that you would like to give out to the Sri Lankan community so that they can take a final action before in taking care of this dengue cases? The final message that you can give us.
Talking about maybe just take the issue of the technology. There are state-of-the-art technology now on dengue control. We can look at it, for example, using the sterile mosquitoes, distributing to replace the existing mosquito, or using Bourbaki for something. It's like in a large scale, you can have that control. But looking at this crisis, I would say this is not the answer. It's going to take maybe half a year or a year to see the effect. But for this crisis, I think we have to go back to the very simple and basic answer is to do the dengue control at the household level. Have no other answer for that. But fortunately, I heard that even though we have very limited option for that, but the Ministry of Health is going to prepare something like using mobile technology to identify, to help making the spot for or hotspot for the dengue control. So this is going to help control of the dengue in the large scale. But I like to say that it's going to fighting against dengue is something you need community, and it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So you need to continue, join and help each other.
I think that is a very much on-point message given to us by Dr. Jirapat. And I think we've reached the end of our discussion this evening. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Professor Siripen Kalyanaruj, the consultant at the World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Case Management of Dengue. Thank you, ma'am. And we had Dr. Jirapat, the senior expert to the Bureau of Vector-Borne Disease and the Department of Disease Control in Thailand. I humbly thank both of you for taking your time of your busy schedule and joining us in this discussion. Just like Dr. Jirapat and Professor Siripen mentioned, it's the responsibility of the community. If you are not taking action by yourself on a household level, there will never be a result at the end. So unless you take that foundational level of that first step on your house, on your household level, there never will be a result that we can expect in the future. So just like Dr. Jirapat mentioned, the result will not be something that happens overnight. So it will be a long-term process that needs to be sustained over time. So the question is, do we let a mosquito take our life, or do we take care of our environment, our household, and make sure that this country is safe for our future generations to exist in? That's the question we'd like to leave you a bit behind. Thank you for joining us with this discussion this evening.